stop for a second and say this out loud. I am tired. Now say, I am enough. They both begin with the same affirmation, which is 2 words, right? But your body responds and feels different when you say those 2 phrases, right? Because those 2 words, I am, are some of the most powerful words in any language. And most of us attach things to them that quietly work against us every day. Here's what your brain is doing and how it's responding to it. And this is important for you to understand, right? Your brain has a built-in filter, right? Scientists have named it the reticular activating system, or the acronym is RAS, right? Which is just a complicated name for something very simple, right? What your brain does is it looks for proof of whatever you tell it you are. Your brain receives millions of pieces of information every second of the day, but it can only focus on a small amount. So what it does is it filters the world for you, right? It highlights what matches to what you believe about yourself, and it ignores what doesn't, right? Just think about it. Um, when you buy a new car, right? You suddenly you see that same car everywhere, right? As if it didn't exist before you bought it, right? And when someone says your name in a crowded room, you hear it immediately, right? But here's the thing, the car was always there. Your name was always being spoken, right? In those moments, it's just that your brain decided it mattered to you and your reality, right? And that's the filter. That's the RAS filter, right? And the most powerful instruction you can give that filter starts with the words, I am. Here's the part that a lot of people don't realize. The things we put after those 2 words don't always start with us, right? Sometimes they were planted, especially with us Black people, right? You were conditioned to believe certain things about yourself, right? Especially if you grew up hearing things like you have to work twice as hard just to get the same chance as everyone else, right? Because in many spaces we walk into, the message is already there, right? Work harder, try a little bit harder. Come on, you got to go the extra mile. You have to prove yourself, prove your worth, right? We end up overperforming just to secure a seat at a table that we belong. Many of us have learned that early in school, in jobs, and in rooms where we were told directly or indirectly that we had to do more just to be seen as equal and worthy and be respected. You were conditioned to believe that. Over time, those outside messages can slowly become inside messages and a part of you, right? Living in you. And without even realizing it, we start attaching them to our identity, right? I am not enough. I am behind. I am the kind of person that things just don't work out for. That's what we wake up in the morning believing, right? Your brain hears that. And once your brain hears it, over time, often enough, it starts looking for evidence to match that, right? Not because it wants to hurt you, but because that's exactly how your brain's filter was designed to operate and do, right? It follows the instructions that begins with the words, I am. But I want you to know that habits can be rewritten. The real issue was never the words I am. The issue was what came after that affirmation. So I'm going to show you now how and where identity, history, and belief start to collide, right? And I want you to sit with this, right? The people who enslaved our ancestors handed them a book, right? They thought they were handing them a tool of control, right? And it preached, obey, wait, suffer now, reward comes later, right? But sometimes the most powerful ideas are hidden in plain sight. So inside that same book, on pages they weren't emphasizing, was one of the most powerful identity statements in human history, right? When they tell us the story of when Moses asks God who he is, God answers to Moses in Exodus 3:14, I am that I am, right? No limit, and there was no condition. Just pure being, right? That's the name. And here's a question most of us never ask. If the most powerful identity statement in that holy book they gave us is I am that I am, why did so many of us grow up being taught versions of I am not enough, right? Was it because it was a misunderstanding, right? Was it the way the message was taught, right? Or did or did we simply stop reading the parts that talked about identity, power, and responsibility? Huh? Because this is the book they said is a playbook, right? From the source, right? But later in that same book, Jesus says something even more radical, right? Who they claim is the Son of God. Later in that same book, Jesus says something that made people very uncomfortable, right? In John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am, right? He uses the same language, and people were ready to kill him for that because he wasn't just claiming authority, he was saying the same I am that God spoke exists in him. But then Jesus takes it a step further as well. He turns to regular people, the fishermen, the tax collectors, everyday people, the lame, the sick, whoever, and says something to them even more powerful. In John 14:12, he says, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, right? Greater. Not equal, not less, greater, right? And this is a man that's been talked about for thousands of years. But here's the part many people misunderstand. Jesus never said, worship me and wait for me to come save you so you can do these greater things. He said, believing in me, and believing in him meant believing in what he believed, right? To believe in him meant to embody the example, right? Living the way he lived, right? Walking in the same spirit, that Holy Spirit that he demonstrated, right? Which included compassion, courage, truth, faith, and action, right? To believe in him meant to embody the example. He stand firm in his word. He was sure of who he was, right? To understand that same spirit of life that moved through him exists in you, that is what he wanted us to believe. Because if you were created by the same creator of all things, which he says, right, then you were never meant to live powerless, right? You were meant to live with purpose, right? With responsibility, right? Stewardship, sovereignty, right? Dominion over your life and your choices here on this earth and your world that you created and are in control of, right? But think about the irony of all of this, right? They handed our ancestors that book thinking it would keep them small and subservient. But inside that book was the most radical identity statement ever written. I am that I am. Hmm. And somewhere along the way, we started saying things like, I am not enough. I am behind. I am the kind of person things just don't work out for. It's just a part of who I am, right? It's just a card I was handed, right? Your brain hears that. Your brain believes that and activates that, right? And your brain starts looking for proof of that because that's what the RAS filter does, right? But the instruction always starts with the same I am. Hmm. So I want you to be honest. What do you usually put after the words I am? Because your brain is listening and receiving and activating it inside of you. So I need you to be careful what you teach your life to become, right? Simple things instead of saying, I am tired. My body needs rest, right? You're defining your world by saying, I am, right? I'm overwhelmed. Stop saying, I'm overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed. Use a different way to say, I'm, I'm in the process of figuring out how to keep going forward, right? Simple words and the way we use language can change our lives significantly, especially if we do it repeatedly. And over time, our realities will adjust to what we want and what we know our lives to be and consist of and understand, and it will reflect the power that we have accepted that we have and what's given to us, right? So over the weekend, do a little bit reflection, a little redirection, right? Changing the narratives, controlling your story, and write it down. Speak it out loud. Practice it, right? And come back in about 30 days and tell me, did you see any difference in your life? Because I know people who have, including myself, once I came to this understanding and embodied who I am and what power I hold, and I teach it to other people consistently. And if you want more information, you can go to my website, luxuraylife.com, and there's a lot of things you could take with you from there. Articles, there's tools and resources, and